Hello and welcome to Liverpool City Region Creating Careers. Today's episode, we're joined by staff members from a company called True, who focus on innovation and investment and are based in London. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today on Creating Careers. If you wouldn't mind just giving a quick introduction to our audience, please. We'll start with you, Jasmine.
Hi, my name is Jasmine and I am the host here at our new offices called True House.
Brilliant.
I'll go next. I'm Owen and I'm an analyst in the innovation team at True.
You.
Hi, I'm Q. I'm an analyst in the investment team at True.
Hi, I'm Arthi. I'm an associate in the innovation team at True.
Thanks very much. So students, don't forget that there is a piece of pre-work that is associated with this episode that will help you understand all about what True do and help you digest all of the information that is on offer today. So if you haven't done that, click pause, go to the description below. There you'll find all the links you need to download that piece of pre-work and complete it, and then come back to us nice and ready to begin today's episode. So we'll start from there. So Q, if you wouldn't mind just giving the students a refresher and overview of what True do as a whole, please.
Yeah, so True is an investment and innovation firm. Particularly, we specialize in private equity and venture capital. The firm is divided into three parts, one being innovation, which is sort of innovation consulting for your big partners like John Lewis, TJX, and we basically just give them advice on all things innovation like metaverse, Web3. And then we've got the investment side, which is split into two parts. The private equity side, we invest in basically retail companies that are bigger, they are already established, and we basically buy them, grow them, and sell them. And then the venture capital side, it's a similar concept. We buy a smaller stake in very fast-growing companies, grow them, and sell them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that overview. Hugely appreciate it. So if we turn our attention to Jasmine, would you mind just giving an overview of what your role is, please?
Okay, so my job title is host, and yes, I am the hostess with the mostess because I'm the first point of contact for everybody who kind of walks through the front door. So that could be guests, clients, partners, like entrepreneurs that are looking for investment. And my job is just kind of welcome them, speak to them, make them have a positive, enjoyable experience at our offices, and just to make sure the whole building is running smoothly, make sure we are very well stocked, everyone's getting a nice coffee. And yeah, just being a smiling face that understands everything that goes on at True and can answer any questions and just point people in the right direction.
Brilliant. So you're essentially giving clients then their first impression of True as a company. Yeah,
the CEO likes to kind of call it the director of first impressions, if you like.
So what do you love about the role that you do?
I mean, I'm such a kind of like bubbly, sociable person. So an aspect of the role that I really love is getting to meet some really interesting people every single day, from all different backgrounds, all different experiences. So like I said, it could be some of our corporate partners that visit the office quite regularly. So I've built up quite a strong relationship with them, and kind of it feels quite like almost like a regular in a coffee shop in some regards. Whereas sometimes there are completely new people who've never heard of, they've never been to the office. They don't exactly know everything about True. They might just be there for investment and not know about the innovation side. So definitely the people is like a huge aspect, which I love. And also we do run a lot of events here as well. So kind of planning those, organizing them and hosting them is quite an exciting aspect as well, because we have some cool people in the building. And I think as well, just being at the center, kind of at the hub, if you like, you're exposed to all aspects of the business. So you get to learn a lot and kind of act like a bit of a sponge into everything that goes on, and very much constantly problem solving and being on my feet. So I like that kind of dynamic, diverse environment to be in.
Yeah. So you are essentially at the heart of everything True's doing. If someone wants to know what's going on, they can come to you. So I'm sure,
Yeah,
sure in your
absolutely.
position, yeah. Quite skilled, isn't it? And having to meet so many different people and change how you communicate with people depending on who it is who's in front of you and what they're after. That communication skill is quite a huge one to have, and it's quite a skill to be able to adapt to the people who are in front of you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said, I really love it. I find it energizing and exciting to chat to different people, but there is such a range of people that come in. So it definitely keeps me on my toes, for sure.
Brilliant. So Q will turn our attention back to you if that's okay. So would you be able to give an overview of your role, please?
Yeah, so again, I'm an analyst in the investment team, and essentially what the investment team do is we buy companies, sell companies, and I sit on like two sides within the PE team. So again, that's the bigger companies, more established, they're probably older. So one of my roles is to go out and just find these companies. So what I find, yeah, like companies that I find interesting, what I think could be a great investment story for us, find them, talk to them, look at their basic, yeah, look at the financials, basically see if they're viable opportunities for investment. And then once we've agreed on the opportunity, I then work on the deal. So that is a process of just buying them essentially. And there's a lot of work that goes on behind it, a lot of due diligence, a lot of checking, a lot of speaking to the founders and the management team. And then once we've acquired them, I also sit on what's called the portfolio team, which is within PE. And that is basically just working with the founders and the management team to help them grow, basically. So I find them, we do the deal, and then I look after them.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So is there any particular sector of company that you invest in, or is it just a company you think is able to grow?
Yeah, so True is actually a specialist in consumer and retail, which is, I think, the most interesting thing about this job because I get to see like brands and companies out there in the world. They're very tangible, they're very touchable. You know them, you know sort of the subsector, like beauty, for example. So it's very exciting, like when you come across these brands that you know of,
Yeah.
and you sort of you understand them a bit more. Yeah.
So would you research quite a few brands and think like there's really potential for us to invest and make them huge?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'd say sort of opportunities come in different ways. So sometimes it's basically just I see a really cool brand on Instagram. I think they could be big in the future, and I tell my team. Or it could be that, we get opportunities that come across our desks from external advisors or even the brands themselves. Or sometimes there are like these like Vogue lists, for example, like top 50 makeup brands right now. I basically troll through them, see what's viable for investment.
Oh, interesting. Are there any brands that you think our students would know that you're working with that you're allowed to say?
I can say what we've looked at in the past. So Little Moons is an example of a deal that I did work on, and that is the ice cream mochi brand that went viral on TikTok. So it was really cool seeing like the interaction between like Gen Zs and the brand that
Yeah.
we're looking at. Yeah, it was cool.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you so much for that. So Owen, if we turn our attention to you, thank you. So could you give us an overview of what you do at True, please?
For sure, yeah. So I'm an analyst in the innovation team. I guess day to day, what that means is I spend my time working with Arthi, trying to service our sort of paying clients in a sort of consultancy way, as Q mentioned. I guess a large part of that, because we are providing a sort of innovation consultancy, is basically just we need to be reading around, keeping abreast of emerging trends, whether it's in technology or consumer behaviors. And part of the way we do that is just by Googling, researching, reading anything and everything. But also part of it is speaking to sort of early stage startups, typically sort of B2B or like business to business sort of tech companies, understanding what they're doing, because that's typically sort of a good indication of where things are going to go. And yeah, I mean, obviously a large part of it is also ultimately servicing the client, which often means making PowerPoint decks to report back of the findings that we have and presenting them to them. So that's typically what takes up the most of our day. Obviously, we have a whole suite of partners. So you're typically across sort of 5 or 6 at any given time. So there is a lot of juggling to do. But yeah, that's pretty much what I do.
Great. So I think it would be quite useful for students if you could just break down those 2 words for us, please, so they get a full grasp of what you do. The word innovation and consultancy, what they mean and how they come together for your role.
For sure, yeah. So I mean, consultancy is like a very broad term, and there is a lot of jargon around consulting. There's so many different types of consulting out there. So I think the most common one that you'll hear about will be management consulting or operation consulting. So a business will pay an external advisor to come in and look at their business and the way things are operating and see if they can help find efficiencies, lower costs, all the sort of boring nitty-gritty stuff, as I would describe it. And then whereas the service is of what we do is consultancy, but then the topic is innovation, which it's probably extremely hard to define. But I'll definitely butcher it, but I would describe it as just as anything sort of forward-facing. How can we not only sort of looking to drive down costs and in very sort of day-to-day business operations, but are there any technologies which we could implement which will create more revenue for us or lower our costs or make it a better consumer experience. It's extremely broad, which I think is one of the best parts of our role, is that you can basically read about anything and everything and make it relevant. But yeah, if I had to try, that would be vaguely what I'd describe it as.
Thank you. So Arthur, last but not least, sorry, you've been patiently waiting there for us to come to you, but would you mind giving us an overview of your role, please?
Yeah, of course I can. So I am an associate in the innovation team, as I said before, and very similar to Owen. I think the best way of describing what I do is helping big businesses at the brands that we all know and love, so like M&S, Primark, John Lewis, TK Maxx, do what they do on a regular basis, but do it better. And the way of thinking about that is in 2 different ways. So one, looking at what can they be doing right now to help improve the way that they work. And that could be about reducing costs. A lot of that is actually about improving customer experience so that when we go to the store, we're actually enjoying it a lot more. And then the other side is looking at what they could be doing over the next 3 to 5 years. So thinking really far in the future of actually, we all get bogged down in our day-to-day, but actually what can I be thinking about that I could be doing in the next 5 years that I should think about now so I can prepare for it in the future. So that's the way that I would describe my role, helping those big companies think that way.
So I know Owen said earlier about how you and Owen work together. So could you just tell us a little bit about how you work with, I know Owen's within your team, but how you work with other departments across True?
Yeah, so I think if I start off with the innovation team, the way that Owen and I work is often really similar in terms of role. But I think as an associate, it takes it a step further where you're actually working a lot closer with the different clients. So, for example, I work really closely with the Primark team. So it's almost as if you're like another employee of Primark and you're actually sitting with them, going through their strategy, trying to understand what their biggest problems are and where the biggest opportunities are. So that's how we sort of work in the innovation team, whereas Owen's role is really about being sort of at the forefront of all the stuff that's happening in the world in terms of innovation, whatever like sort of new technology there is. So that's probably the difference between our roles, but how we work together and bringing that together for any client that we work with. I think for the other teams, so if I think about Q's team, where especially on the portfolio side, so this is looking at the companies that we own, so the sort of medium-sized businesses. A lot of the stuff that we see that's potentially applicable for something like a Marks and Spencer is also quite applicable for some of the businesses that we own. So if I think about Hush, which is one of our brands, it's a clothing business, it's women. a lot of similarities to a lot of the big brands that we buy and shop with. So finding those early stage companies or those startups or small businesses, as we describe them, and finding where they can potentially plug into the portfolio companies is really helpful as well. And then the growth team, which is the other team that Q talked about in the introduction, is all the really small companies that might be really cool brands. So we have a healthy donuts brand, that's an example, helping them get into some of the bigger companies where we've already got connections. But then also there are a lot of technology companies as well. So the technology angle is where we can be like, right, this is a really cool tech. How can we potentially put this into something like a Primark? So that's how we work across the teams. And honestly, all three teams work really closely together, which I think is the fun part of it. You're never stuck in your own role.
It's interesting hearing about all these different brands you're working with as well. I mean, I'm hoping you can send some healthy donuts my way.
Yeah, definitely will send those across.
So Owen, I'm interested to know if a young person who's watching this today thinks they want to get into your sector or your role, what would your biggest piece of advice be for them to develop themselves?
One of the things which I find no one really mentioned when I was younger was around, I think if you are interested in anything, or identify where your passions are, and I think if you are passionate enough about it, you can make that relevant for whatever you end up wanting to do. So that may sound like it's coming, our role is definitely good for that in terms of, if I like Web3 or the metaverse, as Q mentioned earlier, I can go and read about it and make it relevant for work. Obviously that's a silly example, but I do think if there are certain things where you feel, you get enjoyment from them, or fulfill you from a sort of curiosity perspective, whether it's using Excel and doing some numbers and putting in some equations, or whether it's just reading about something, or you love gaming, whatever, I think you can use that to your advantage in things like interviews, and it will come across that you're actually genuinely interested in it, rather than trying to say, I've wanted to be in investments since the age of 5, and this is why I've done all these degrees and whatever. I think if you just link it back to the things you are actually passionate about, that will come across strongly.
Yeah, so basically everything we do, everything you enjoy, school, outside of school, sports teams, or like you mentioned gaming, you are developing skills all the time, aren't you, that you can put into any role, and as you say, transfer that passion into whatever you're doing a bit of job carving almost. Arthur, if we turn our attention back to you, please. I'm interested in what advice would you give to your younger self at the start of your career, whether that's in True or when you started working in general?
Yeah, I think one of the big pieces of advice that I'd give myself and for anyone out there is don't let other people dictate what you can and can't do. So really similar to Owen about following your passions, I spent a whole lot of my younger life being told, oh, you should do this as a job, you should do that as a job. And honestly, none of them excited me. And I felt like I had to do what people told me to do. And then also people said that, oh, you can't do this because you don't have this skill set. But ultimately, I think if you're passionate about something and you have skills that you're developing, you will build the skill sets that you need for whatever passion that you have is. And I think being able to develop those over time and being able to try things out. I think a lot of young people often feel like they're locked into whatever profession they start with. Don't feel that way, because actually loads of people try things out, and you'll find that you like certain things and you dislike certain things. So you'll change things up and you'll go into a different role. You might switch the way you do things in your current role, and having that flexibility and being open to trying things is the best way of going about it.
Yeah, I love that, and I'm similar myself. I've gone in a few different directions so far in my career, and I think that's becoming more and more common in like a gig economy. So yeah, I love that advice. Don't let anyone dictate to you. Do what you feel is your passion, and you will get there. You will get there, even if it's somewhere you never envisioned that you'd end up. Thank you for that. So Jasmine, I'd like to link what we try to do in every episode is of creating careers. We like to link careers back to the school curriculum. Basically, emphasise to students what is the point in going to school every day. Why are your subjects that you're sitting in helping you in the future? So I'm interested in any skills or knowledge that you gained during your time at school or college that you still use today.
Well, you know what? I think having left school nearly 6 years ago, looking back now, you realize that it's so much more than just going to lessons and doing specific subjects. Like ultimately, all of the knowledge you gain from them is so important, but you're learning, yes, so much more in terms of, for example, communication is something that we've all mentioned, which you will use no matter what you do in every single job, because you need to be able to have a relationship with your colleagues, clients, forming long lasting relationships with partners is essential in kind of getting returning customers and building loyalty. And also things like teamwork as well. Like it seems silly to say, but that is how you thrive in whatever kind of career you go into as well. And I would say like little things like emotional intelligence, self-awareness, you don't realize you're building those skills up, but you constantly are. And if I'm going to go into more specific detail as well, like I loved English at school and I studied English at university, and kind of words and language, again, they're really at the core of like communication skills. Being able to connect with people, like people skills is so hugely important in my role. And making in kind of putting two people together and solving a problem, fulfilling a need, having a mutually beneficial interaction. Like again, that is something that happens in every job. And another thing as well, particularly working in this industry, this sector, which is investment and innovation, it's about kind of leading technologies, and ultimately there is a lot of maths involved. So spotting trends, being analytical, pulling things together, or even just reading graphs, they are super, super important. So I really think that, as with everyone else has kind of mentioned, don't be bogged down by this one particular lesson at school that you didn't enjoy, because it all comes together in the end. And as long as you kind of really put work in and go for the things that you enjoy and are passionate about, like it will pay off, and for sure in the future.
I love that, Jasmine. Thank you so much. And I think if hopefully students will take away from this episode, it's all about skills. It's all about skills. So we've come to the end of today's session. I can't thank you all enough for taking time out of your busy schedules to talk to us about what you do at SCREW. So students, if you've got any questions whatsoever about anything you've heard today or anything across the Creating Careers series, the email address that is coming up on your screen now, please send questions to that. It is careershub@growthplatform.org. And don't forget to download and complete the Creating Careers roadmap that allows you to evaluate your interest in all the different job roles that you have seen across the Creating Careers series. So thanks again for joining, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.